Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Altmed podcast. Andrew Dowling here with me as always, my co-host Mitch. How you doing, Mitch?
Hello. Very well, thank you.
Mitch Kurtz in the house. Remember, if you like our podcast or you derive some knowledge or benefit from listening to it, please remember to hit like on all our videos and subscribe so you will get our latest episodes. Right, so today we are visiting a topic that I think we've tangentially had some contact with some of our previous guests, but this one's going to be a full deep dive on all things terpenoid, terpene related, and to take us on that guided journey.
Andrew.
We terp. To take us on that journey, we've got none other than Sam Barlow, who is the director and founder of My Terpenes. Sam, great to have you with us.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, really good to be here. Pumped.
Well, we come across this topic all the time in conversations with doctors, in conversations with patients. A lot of talk about terpenes, but maybe before we do a bit of a Terp 101 crash course, can you maybe just talk to us about your background and how you fell into this world?
Yeah, sure. So I've been involved in wellness, health, botanical science industry for about 12 years through my non-public holding company, Hazelwood Herbals. So we've always done product development, research, supply and private label manufacture for different wellness and health brands. Basically just work with anything that's active and botanical. I've got a really deep love of nature and science and medicine. And so I've just kind of like followed my interest. I should like come out on the record and say I'm like profoundly unqualified to give any real information whatsoever. I haven't even been to university. I'm just a passionate learner. And the cool thing about STEM is that, you know, it's all just on there. It's all on the internet. So I use that actually as an encouragement, because anybody that wants to learn, although it seems kind of mystifying, it's really not. You just got to break it up into little bits and follow your curiosity. So I've kind of done that my whole life, and then got smarter people around me to do the stuff that I couldn't. And, you know, we've developed a lot of products, hundreds, I don't even know how many, that have gone through other brands out to market, mostly in Australia. So we've kind of worked with, like, there's like a cycle every few years where we get a new focus. Terpenes have been the focus since 2018. So we initiated the commercial industry of terpenes in Australia. We're banging on about them. Nobody wanted to hear about it. And now there's a big fervor around it. So it's cool. It's actually nice that people want to hear about it, because they're just such an incredible medicine. I have alleged medicine, I should say. I have my personal entry into it is my mum's got a lot of chronic pain. She's got osteoarthritis and a few other issues. So I was working on formulations for her, came across them. I've also just, you know, total cannabis fan myself, and started diving deep. And as I started reviewing the literature, I started getting very hyper fixated and excited. And when I got my hands on some, I was kind of blown away, and that kind of started the journey. So, you know, we're a bit behind in this country, so I've always just looked to the States really, where they're pushing it forward, and then tried to innovate on our end down here. So, you know, we started off with isolates and therapy, wellness blends, got into strain profiles, and now just looking at other novel applications, whether that's form factor or just new ways to present them to assist in synergy medicine, and just bring the thing forward. I mean, it's really cool that they're all the way through the food chain already. They're very safe compounds. We've been ingesting them for thousands of years. They're one of the few kind of alternative wellness things that really just have a firm kind of acceptance already as far as industry goes. So that's great. And they're just wonderful because they smell great, and they're all the way present through the natural world, which is probably a segue into explaining what they are. But that's just a great way to kind of connect with them as well, because you can, I mean, you're interacting with them every day. You're smelling them and consuming them all day long, and they're in all your spices and yummy aromatic foods. So people actually have a much deeper connection to them than they realize. It's just, yeah, now we're getting around the science and stuff.
Speaking of that segue, do you want to tell us what they are?
Yeah, for sure. Can I scratch my nose? Because it's really itchy.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, okay. terpenes are basically the building blocks of essential oils. It's the easiest way to say it. If you were to take one essential oil and break it down into its constituents, it's going to be largely made of terpenes and terpenoids, right? So they produce an essential oil by a fractional distillation. What that means is they'll just take the plant material, they'll heat it up to a very particular degree, and once that reaches a certain boiling point, the oil will volatilize. It will turn from a liquid to a gas, and it will evaporate up, hit a condenser, and drip out, right? And so terpenes have actually given me a huge respect for essential oils. I used to just kind of write them off. I thought it was a bit of like a Facebook MLM thing, but like they're very, very powerful things. And there's a long tradition of ingesting them for medicinal use, specifically in the French tradition. The English one is more like aromatherapy, but yeah, the French tradition, they use them a lot. But so they're the building blocks of essential oils. They're aromatic hydrocarbons. They're lipids, which means they're oils, and they are very aromatic. So basically any aromatic volatile plant that you smell, so whether that's like rosemary, lavender, orange peel, lemon, anything else, that kind of beautiful aromatic vibe, the terpenes are responsible for that. So yeah, the thing about essential oils, while they're really potent and powerful because they contain so many of these different terpenes at different ratios, they're kind of a blunt instrument for health, because to get an optimal dose of one of the terpenes in that essential oil, you might have to take too much of another terpene or not enough of one. So by continuing that process of fractional distillation and getting more granular with the temperatures at which you extract the different terpene isolates, you can then make these structured terpene blends that are basically a kind of synthesized essential oil, but they have very targeted effects where you can really get the optimal dose of each isolate. And so that just leads to a whole bunch of really cool therapeutic or wellness or flavor applications. Yeah, that's kind of what they are. Did I explain? Does anything else?
That all made sense to me. And I guess my question then is, how many of these building blocks do we know about that exist in nature? Do we have any sense of this?
It's over 1,000 terpenes and terpenoids. Yeah. So cannabis, usually contains, like, there's about 30 or 40 that turn up over and over again in cannabis. They're not just made by plants, they're also made by insects. They're also made by mushrooms. They're also like the precursors for many other things that plants produce, right? So cannabinoids indeed are made from terpenes. So like there'll be a terpene, and I think it's polyphenol inside the trichrome, and then there's a chemical reaction that happens that produces the cannabinoid. And so plants use the terpenes, I think, largely for either biosynthesis or insect and pest repellent properties. And so the terpene expression in a plant will really be a reflection of what's going on in its environment. If it's getting harassed by pets, if it's in drought, et cetera, that will kind of change the terpene profile. And yeah, they have those uses, but then they have this lots of affinity for different signaling pathways in the body, and that's where we believe that their therapeutic effect comes from. The science is far from settled. That's why it's so exciting, and that's why an idiot like me can get in there and contribute to the culture, because we really don't know. And so, like, if you're curious, you can become you can become a thought leader in the space, because it's really fresh. I mean, we only knew the ECS existed 23 years ago or something. So that is that's very fresh. And then terpenes only really came into under the spotlight around 2011 with Ethan Russo's work that he did that kind of kickstarted the whole thing. So, we're talking about an emergent meta system in the body that's only been known about for 20 years. That's pretty incredible. And that means there's just a lot to learn. And if we approach that with like curiosity and humility, and with a spirit of collaboration, sharing information, then we can all benefit, So that's kind of like, it's the mission that drives us. We're very open with sharing the information. Other people in the space will try to get guarded on IP. And I just think that, this information needs to be out there. And we'll need to take, great benefit from these wonderful, abundant and safe compounds that are all throughout nature.
I'm just thinking, yeah, I did read originally that a lot of the terpenes kind of exist to either attract or detract predators to plants, for example, things like that, to either say, go away, certain insect or
Yeah.
come here, be and pollinate me kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that connection. And I wonder if that also has some kind of application to humans in a similar way to some kind of respect.
Yeah, especially for they've all got, almost all of them have got antimicrobial properties and insecticide properties. So there are like quite a lot of applications using them as natural insecticides for organic farming. Topically they're great. Certain ones are great for like the P. acnes, the bacteria that causes acne, for infection control and all that stuff. They really have quite a range of therapeutic benefits, and they do cross over a lot. But like the main ones are, well, it's actually so vast it sounds like snake oil, like anti-inflammatory, anti-nociceptive, which means pain relief, analgesic, which means relaxing. What else do they do? They're neuroprotective. They are antibacterial. I think I already said that. There's probably a million other ones that I can't remember, but it's a long list, and that's due in part because of the wider non-specific action they have, and we're still figuring that out. So they work on many systems in the body, not just the endocannabinoid system, and they affect those different systems in many different ways. Whether that's through, there's a little bit of direct affinity, like one of them, beta-caryophyllene or beta-caryophyllene, depending on how you say it, has a weak affinity for CB2, but most of them work in these other ways, which are like they'll interact with PPAR receptors, with NFKB, with but systems as kind of far away as I think GABAergic system. So they kind of act as this priming. They have this priming function that helps to dial up other processes. And then because they have a low molecular weight and they're lipophilic, which means they love oils, they're very good at penetrating cells, because cells have got this little membrane, which is a lipid membrane, I think. And things that aren't soluble in oil, that aren't lipophilic, have a hard time getting across. So that might be part of the theorized entourage effect, is that even if they are having all these other actions, but they also could be helping bring the cannabinoids across and bring other things across the blood-brain barrier, and increasing bioavailability and absorption as well. So it's kind of vast and deep and exciting, and I think we know about 10% of what's going on.
Yeah, and basically they're kind of like modulating the experience that you're having when you're smoking cannabis.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did I say smoking? I meant vaporizing.
You mean taking your legal prescription via a TGA approved method, such as a vaporizer?
That's what I said.
That's what you said. Yeah. I mean, we can talk about their role in cannabis if you want, or where do you want to go?
Well, I'm curious because with cannabis strains, when they go under the microscope, just get this wild variation in the terpene profile of two given strains. There's a lot of focus, obviously, around major and minor cannabinoids and these sorts of things. But you mentioned at the outset that you think that terpenes are the better way to kind of classify cannabis as opposed from the kind of sativa indica dichotomy that we're used to hearing about. What can you maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so this is it's not, I mean, I agree with this view, but I didn't kind of come up with it. It's definitely out there amongst pioneers in the space. And just in the sense that, cannabis is also something we're learning a lot about. It was a underground recreational drug for a long time until we started looking into its therapeutic benefits because of the political stuff around it. And so although we've got a lot of knowledge, we've got a long way to go. And, when they were starting to classify cannabis, they were looking at the morphology, which means like the way that the plant grows, and you have this sativa indica dichotomy. But the chemistry is not. The chemistry is a better way to look at what's going on inside that plant, and it doesn't divide neatly across those two areas. Also, most plants are a hybrid of some kind. You don't get that many pure sativas or indicas out there compared to everything else. But we did notice that, wow, there's all these like vastly different effects of strains, and what is that? And I don't want to discount indica and sativa as a factor, but it seems to make the most sense from a first principles basis that those vastly different terpene profiles present in the plants will prime, modulate, and potentiate the cannabinoid receptors and other receptors in the body to produce different psychoactive and non-psychoactive effects. I've just noticed in my personal experience, like when I'm selecting a strain with my clinical partner, I look at the terpene profile. I look at what do I need to get out of the strain. Do I want something that is going to help with my sleep, or do I want something that's going to actually help me be creative and jam and be social and that kind of thing? And I definitely noticed that difference in that. So you're getting wide varieties of terpene composition across the different strains, and the way that they activate or deactivate certain systems, I think, is the major factor for the difference between those strains. Because it's a dosage thing. Like if you have 20% THC or 13% THC, well, you can modulate that just by dosage, right? If you smoke a bit more of a 13%, you're going to get that same amount of cannabinoids in your system. But the way that those terpenes are interacting with your ECS are going to modulate how those cannabinoids actually affect you. So
Yeah,
it's much more nuanced and kind of better way to look at stuff, I think. And I think most people are coming around to that.
yeah. I often use the example like if you drink alcohol, it's really the ethanol that gets you drunk in any given situation. But what's the difference between red wine or tequila or gin or beer? You know what I mean? It's kind of comes down in some ways to terpene-like compounds within alcohol that give you that modulated effect of maybe one like tequila is more uplifting and red wine makes you a bit sleepier, for example. So yeah, speaking of which, what are the main kind of cannabinoid or cannabis terpenes that we see out there, and what are some of the purported effects of those said terpenes?
Sure. So that was a really good analogy that you made, and it's helpful one with alcohol because we kind of we're a lot more familiar with it, and we know those effects experientially, and that's the best way to learn about cannabis and terpenes is to go and get different scripts and try different products and study up on the terpenes and see how those how they affect you differently, and you actually get that knowledge experientially.
Or travel to America.
Yeah, go to a great dispensary in Cali or something, do it in the metaverse, where things are more enlightened. But so main terpenes appearing in cannabis. So like, as I said, like, you're often finding 20 to 30 terpenes in a strain. But main ones that turn up again and again and again are myrcene, limonene, linalool, alpha and beta pinene, humulene. They're usually there in quite high concentration. So is terpinolene in certain strains, terpeneol. Trying to think. Majority of strains tend to have a few of those as the dominant terpenes. And then you've got kind of like a long list of other terpenes that will feature, but usually in small amounts. So I don't know, I could list them off, but it's probably just a bunch of words. So if we can go through it, I guess, like the effects are the purported effects are quite wide and diverse, and because the ECS is a non-specific system, it's kind of like you're giving your ECS a prompt, and then it will do with that what it kind of wants to do. So it does get a little bit hard to pin down, but beta-caryophyllene or beta-caryophyllene has some weak signaling on CB2. It's fantastic for inflammation and for inflammation-related pain. Myrcene is analgesic and it's good for pain relief. It appears to affect COX2 inhibition, which is a inflammation response to cytokines and other stuff. The pinenes, so alpha pinene is great for like focus and clarity of mind, brain fog, motivation, that kind of thing. It appears to interact with acetylcholine sterase. I always thought it was an acetylcholine sterase inhibitor, and I need to say that, but I was reading up on it recently, and it appears to not do that, but actually boost acetylcholine production. So rather than stopping the thing that breaks acetylcholine down, it actually just adds more. Beta pinene has been shown to influence the 5-HTA receptor. I'm not sure which one exactly. So that's kind of mood enhancing, good for depression. And so the two of them together, because they often come as a racemic mixture, really good for kind of clarity of mind, mood, and motivation. Linalool is, so I believe it, it's a sedative, and it's good for pain. It's also good, it promotes wound healing. through a pathway that I can't remember. It does have an interaction with the GABAergic system as well. So that's GABA being the major inhibitory transmitter that kind of, you feel when you're drunk and when you're relaxed. So they've got these kind of primary ways that they work, but then they're often kind of multimodal. So there's things like positive allosteric modulation, where they'll kind of modulate other receptors, but they don't have a direct binding. There's increasing PPAR receptors, which are they're due to like gene transcription, and they regulate immunity and inflammation. I believe I'm probably butchering all this actually. There's NFKB, which is another like gene transfer thing. So there's all these different pathways that they've been trying to work on, and they often have a lot of kind of shared effects. So when we're looking at creating like wellness blends, we kind of make these little clusters of little mini synergies, like little entourages with entourages, if that makes sense, and then try to stack them on top of each other to get more targeted wellness outcomes.
So is that like, you make a blend of well-known uplifting terpenes, let's say, versus ones that are maybe more sedating, and you can call one a little bit more sleep oriented, let's say, or something like that?
Yeah. So that's what people are doing. To be honest, like anyone can throw terpenes in a bottle and you'll get a pretty decent result. You can take that a lot further by a lot of iteration, experimentation, but they are pretty friendly. So as long as you do it in a safe way, look at the LD and the no observed, what is that one? NOEL number, whatever that is. Keep those things safe.
Yeah, because it can get like a bit caustic kind of at certain levels, from my understanding.
Yeah, look, best practice is to dilute them. I mean, I shouldn't say this, but I just have them straight, and I don't recommend anybody does that. But I don't have any problem with that. But generally, we dilute them with a carrier like MCT to help absorption, or hemp seed oil, because that's cool, because it's a hemp little hemp connection, and that is the way I'd recommend taking them. It depends. They can be irritants. It depends on the sensitivity of the person. In rare cases, they can trigger migraines. Like migraines can be triggered by strong smells. So you should always approach things carefully, see how your body reacts. But they do all have that GRAS status, which is generally regarded as safe. So when used appropriately at appropriate amounts, they're accepted as very safe compounds.
How do you extract them from nature? I know you sort of touched on before heating them to get an oil out, but is this kind of, just talk me through it. If I wanted to say extract terpenes from a strawberry, how would I go about doing that?
So well, first you'd probably take out the essential. Okay, so like I said, every terpene is at a different boiling point, right? So if you put some plant material into a still, and a still is just like a kettle with a heat plate that you can control the temperature of, and that will heat up the material that's in there. And then say you're targeting, say alpha pinene. I'm trying to think of a terpene that I know the boiling point off my hand, so I can sound smart. Like I think beta carotene is like 170 degrees, or it's actually because it's a sesquiterpene. It has a higher boiling point. The larger molecule has a higher boiling point than the monoterpenes, which are a lot of them are monoterpenes, like myrcene, limonene, etc. So
I do feel confident saying that your knowledge of terps is at least 1900% on Mitch and I. But so you can throw numbers.
You'd hope so, though.
We'll just
it's my whole business.
Like we'll just go with whatever numbers you throw at us. But
breaking down also monoterpenes versus the other would be great as well for everybody listening and who can't pronounce them like me.
Monoterps.
So if I could so it refers to the amount of it's I'm going to sound so dumb. It's like it's a hydrocarbon ring, and then I think monoterpene has one, and then the sesquiterpene has more. So it's the molecular weight and size of the molecule. If I had 1 minute on Wikipedia, I'd give you like a much. So we'll check this after, and if I've said it wrong, I'm cut it. But it's due to that. So it's different structure of the molecule. So monoterpenes have a lower boiling point. They have a lower molecular weight, and they're a simpler configuration. They're building blocks of these things called isoprene units, which are these little hydrocarbon units, and the way they link together and the structure depends on the name of the terpene. There's I think more than 6. There's a monoterpene, there's diterpene, there's sesquiterpene, et cetera. Many of the ones that we're interested in are monoterpenes or sesquiterpenes. So back to the distillation, basically, say beta carotene was 170 degrees. you would heat the still up to 170 degrees, and then you would be capturing that would volatilize, it would turn to a gas, it would come up, it would hit a little condenser plate and drip out, and you'd be getting everything that's at that boiling point. However, you'd also be catching the stuff that's has a lower boiling point,
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say,
yeah, they do that via fractional distillation, where they'll start with the thing that they're targeting that has the lowest boiling point. They'll take all that out first, and then they'll move up to the next one. They'll take all that out, and it goes on and on and on. So it's a very natural process. Like alternative people like that. There's only heat and water. You could say it's solventless, but water is a solvent, so it does contain a solvent. But there's no
technicality.
no other solvents involved, which means it's really quite yummy. To purify them further, you then have to do other steps, and you have to get kind of more granular with it. So most of the botanical terpenes are not pure, and the purity will come in. It depends on where you source them from and that kind of thing. But the other impurities are just other terpenes that come across that share a boiling point, essentially. So like, say you're extracting beta caryophyllene, you're also going to get some eugenol, you're going to get some alpha caryophyllene, also known as humulene, and a few other things that are present in, this is if you're extracting from clove, because it has those terpenes in it. If you're extracting from another plant species, you get a different profile as contaminants, but the contaminants aren't problematic because they're also kind of good things for health. Having said that, we always just try to get the highest purity possible, just because we're perfectionists like that. So yeah, just always there's a few steps you can do to increase it. We don't do any distillation ourselves. That's something that happens where there's a lot of agriculture. It usually happens in the tropics, because a lot of these plants are tropical plants. So we import terpene isolates, and then we do the compounding from there. It's just it's a cost thing. If we were to do it ourselves here, we wouldn't be able to provide it at a price that was accessible. And that's the other great thing about them, is that they're a lot more accessible from a price point compared to cannabinoids. They're very safe, and in many cases they work better. And that's not even coming from me, it's coming from some of the pharmacists I work with. They've had much better results shifting their patients from CBD isolate products over to terpene products and getting better outcomes. So they've told me anyway. So yeah.
So what's cool. What is that price point for, say, is it sold in like a 10 mil or a 30 mil bottle?
So we're primarily a B2B company. Like, I'm here to help people get into the space if they're cool and want to be part of it. So we do a little retail online, but it's like nothing pretty much. The main part of our business is doing product development, assisting with creating structured blends, and doing supply and that kind of thing. So as far as what's out there in the market, you're looking at I think the average is around 30 mil bottle. Say it's like between 5 to 10% diluted, which is too weak in my opinion. Retailing for around 60 to 80 bucks. And say of that's going to last you a month or something. So if you compare that with a cannabis product, it's good. But you don't need to be one or the other. They're great adjuncts to cannabis products. It's fantastic if you just add other botanical terpenes into your cannabis products when you're doing your manufacturing. They really synergize really nicely, and they'll stretch out your registered and legal cannabis product, and you'll get a much better value from that. And much better health outcomes as well, as far as what we've seen anecdotally. There aren't heaps of studies in humans, and it would be really good to start doing those. There's a lot of work being done out there, like in rat and mouse models, and they have an ECS and it works, but it'd be cool to see more human studies. I think because it's just been everyone's been very excited about studying cannabinoids. That's where the focus has been.
Andrew's pet gopher responded amazingly to his critical kush blend.
Yeah, my gopher had insomnia, and I gave some myrcene, and he's doing really well, to be honest. His whole gopher mood has improved. It's just been great.
Great. Awesome.
I have to say, when I was trying to explain it to people originally, I think I used an example, but I'm not sure it was 100% correct. I used to say, well, the thing that makes a watermelon taste like a watermelon, and they take that and they put it in bubble gum, and then your bubble gum now tastes like watermelon. That's terpenes. But I actually think, reflecting on that was also flavonoids.
And esters. A lot of those fruit flavors are esters.
Yeah. So can you break down a little bit about the difference between terps and flavs?
No.
and esters as well, because I want to know
No.
why. I love that flavor of that artificial grape flavor. That's,
Yeah.
you get it in like Hubba Bubba or something. I hate that I
Yeah.
like it. I know it tastes nothing like grape, but is that what you just called ester? What is that?
I believe that's an ester,
Okay.
but I cannot talk to you about the chemistry of that or flavonoids
I
because
think
I'm
you
really
can use it to get into
don't
the
know.
United States.
Not bad,
What do you
Mitch.
mean?
Not bad. Is that the name of
Oh, the
their
ester. Oh, very
entry?
good.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well
not bad,
traveled.
Mitch. You
It's a dad joke.
definitely.
You get a kid or what?
Yeah,
I'm
Sounds like a dad
exactly.
practicing,
joke.
apparently, practicing only.
Yeah.
Okay, but when going back to your point about people getting maybe a better effect off the terps versus an isolate, let's say, can you talk to us about what do you know about the entourage effect in relation to terps?
Yeah. So it's a shame that the entourage effect is such a cool sounding term because it's kind of inaccurate. And really, we're talking about synergy and polypharmacology. And so synergy is a much better term because entourage is what's an entourage? You got your star, which is what THC, what we thought it was, or maybe CBD. And then the entourage is just kind of the losers that hang around the star, making him look good, and that's not the case. Like
I never
we're
thought
talking,
about that.
yeah, we're talking about holistic integrated plant medicine, and that's the incredible thing about cannabis and what a diverse, vastly complex, and like uncategorizable beast it is. It just defies reducing it to a couple of molecules, and it's going to continue to defy it. I think that we're only at the start of understanding that. But the interesting thing is that, well, first I'd say that the science on entourage effect is not settled. There's a lot of debate. It's certainly settled in my mind, but then I'm not didn't even go to uni, so whatever. But like, it's the thing is that there are you've got like 100 chemicals in this plant, and the beauty of synergy is that it's not 1+1+1=3. It's 1+1+1=5, right? There's some kind of thing that happens there, where the sum total of all the components creates an emergent phenomena or an emergent effect that is greater than those the individual values of those components. And terpenes play a huge role in that, but so do all the other cannabinoids. So do the flavonoids, which I know very little about. The polyphenol. There's probably stuff in the waxes as well. Like, who knows? Like, we're going to find out a lot more. But with that all being said, terpenes, they modulate and they potentiate cannabinoids via many different mechanisms. So the first and most obvious one is bioavailability, right? It's like terpenes, like I said before, are very good at saturating cell wall and permeating blood-brain barrier. So they are solvents, and they're fantastic solvents. And so anything that is going to help dissolve that cannabinoid and help it penetrate deeper into the cell is going to have a modulatory and potentiatory effect. So there's just that kind of that thing. Then there's those methods that I mentioned before, positive allosteric modulation, where they're priming the receptors. There's also them acting on their own on other parts of the ECS, or indeed on other systems of the body, that will then have a synergistic effect with the cannabinoids that are being consumed. So like you've got increased absorption, you've got standalone effects of themselves through different pathways, and then you have modulation of the actual cannabinoid receptors as well. So it's quite diverse, and it makes a lot of sense that they would have an effect, and that's why strains have such different effects, in my opinion.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I was just so basically, it's what you're saying is it's not just the entourage effect around gathering around a cannabinoid and like propping him up, but him or he or she, but they, but it's
Are
more
you
like
assuming the gender of the cannabinoid there, Mitch?
terp gender assumptions. I'm sorry.
That's terrible.
But basically, you're saying you could take, say, 3 terpenes and put them together, or you could take 2 terpenes and a cannabinoid, and that would work potentially. Or there could be, 5 flavonoids and 1 terpene. Like, there's all these avenues that we haven't considered yet that could be potentially beneficial.
Yeah, and then there's another layer of complexity in there, in the sense that it's going into an individual's ECS that has a different level of tone, right? So because all of these things, including cannabinoids, have non-specific actions, what that means is you're not going to get the same result every time. It's basically providing a signal, and then the body will do with that what it feels like it should do with that. So that makes it it makes it good, but it also makes it hard, because it's hard to kind of lock these things down. And it's been a bit for the scientific community to get their head around. I mean, they're used to dealing with, single molecules with one action, and now you're talking about a medicine with cannabis with 100 chemicals in it that all have different actions, right? And that all interact with each other to create different effects. And then that's going through another complexity layer, which is that every single person's endocannabinoid system is going to take that information and do different things with it. So, you have to be a nerd and extremely passionate and excited to want to get into it, because it's a total dumpster fire unless you're really interested in it. And then it's just like endless hours of fun on
It is
PubMed,
amazing. I honestly feel like that it's daunting how that prospect of the, complex systems that exist within the cannabis plant and within our own human biology, and the unique outcomes that you get from the fusion of those two things. But I think to a young and motivated researcher, the prospect of actually not just going and working in an R&D lab for a big pharma and just focusing on single molecules, I don't know, I think it's really, really exciting. I like that we're only at the precipice of this whole research frontier at the moment. It's a very, very exciting time. I just wanted to ask as well about, just with your, deep diving into this topic of terpenes, and do you find yourself now just with food that you eat, or, something that you're drinking, man, do you just annoy people in your life by giving them like a terpene profile, tasting notes almost, whenever you're eating or drinking? Like, how does this go?
Yeah, all the time. My partner just tells me to shut up now. I actually, we posted a video on this the other day. Like, I got a park across from my house, and I go on terpene walks. I check in with certain trees, see how they're going, the ones that have the smells that I like. I can't drink, like, I like craft beer, and like it's like a musician going to a jazz thing. You don't really enjoy the music because you're like, oh, what's that? And so like I drink some like fancy hot beer, and I'm trying to pick apart the terpene profile, because that's all of what craft beer is, just different terpenes in the hops varieties they use. So it's a bit of a burden and a curse, but it's really fun, and it's really cool to develop the nose for it. And I guess, like, part of the message that I want to say is that this is a really, like, anybody can learn this stuff. It seems overwhelming, and there's a lot of scientific terms. Like, you really don't need to know any of that. You just need to go out and have direct sensory connections, follow your curiosity, go like pick up your orange, smell it, and look up terpene profile of commercial orange species. Have Wikipedia open, just go down multiple rabbit holes. Every time you get to a word you don't understand, just look that one up, and do that while you're smelling the terpene that you're thinking about. And because aroma goes directly into the hippocampus and passes those abstraction layers, like you're actually getting this very tactile sensory experience with the plant, and that information will start to go in, and you start to be able to spit out these terms that confuse people. But to really understand something, you should be able to explain it to a child. And I don't think we should hide behind like I love getting into the weeds and nerding out and having the correct terms, but and that is great and fulfilling and very important, especially if you're developing things. But anybody can connect with these things, because we're interacting with them all the day, and it's fun. It's just nice and fun, and the world does start to come alive to you and look a little differently. Like,
absolutely.
I've always been bad at math, and I'm trying to change that now. That was mostly just due to my like crappy teachers and stuff at school. But when I see like a physicist talk about the beauty of an equation, like, there's a whole world of beauty out there that they can't see, and I have like a desire to see that. And so I'm trying to learn math so I can appreciate that entire universe of beauty that I'm blind to. And the terpene thing is something I've landed on now, where the world has a different color to me because I'm tuned into the smells, and it's greatly enhanced my life and makes me happy.
Well,
Totally.
The olfactory sense is the most closely linked to memory, I believe. So
that's right.
So you might be training your memory. You'd be light years away from Alzheimer's in old age.
Yeah, totally. And actually, obviously, that's a fantastic way to learn about a terpene is to be smelling it as you're learning it. But I've also been experimenting with just smelling things when I'm learning stuff that's not terpene related because I think it does make that connection, you know. So if you're trying to learn something that's hard, like have it associate a particular smell with it, smell it as you're taking in the information, and I find I do get better retention that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I found it's, you know, going into this space, it's made me appreciate just, you know, seemingly mundane things that you might be doing in life, like, you know, just cooking a meal,
Yeah.
and you might be, I don't know, chopping some garlic or, you know, getting some lemon rind prepared. And yeah, just if you actually immerse yourself in the aromas of what you're cooking and how complex, depending on the strain of the lemon or whatever the different variations might be.
Lemon strains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's you know, there's not one type of lemon, right? There's lemon haze, there's but
Lemon kush.
but it's, yeah, it really yeah, I think it's,
speaking of which, at the coalface of the terp scene,
Yeah.
what do you see in terms of flavor preferences, or like what are people, do you think, gravitating towards? Surely you'd get, let's say, repeat orders on certain types more than others.
Pinene, if they're into craft beer. That's my guess. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely a taste thing. And it depends on how much the person knows, because if you don't know much about cannabis strains, you're probably going to pick OG Kush, you know. And like, don't get me wrong, that's one of my favorite strains. Like, it's got an incredible profile, and I just love it. But it can be overwhelming, so you'll probably just pick the ones that you've heard. If you're an enthusiast and a nerd about it, then you'll be going for the flavors that you like, and so they'll go for different things. But then it comes down to personal taste as well. So people, for the uneducated nose, people tend to go towards the fruity strains. So stuff that's high in myrcene, limonene, and a little bit of little for that floral note or something. But then, you know, some people like that really dank, diesely, cheesy stuff, and that's kind of more the terpinolene and maybe even the fenchol or the other kind of really earthy terpenes that are present in those strains. So it is a taste thing, and it doesn't, you know, we do obviously have profiles that are more popular, but I'm not sure if it can be, how much of that is just what people know and how much is what they're going
fair.
for. Yeah.
Fair. But maybe on the monoterpenes.
Sorry.
Like maybe on the monoterpenes, like let's say limonene, like actually choosing select terpenes. Do you think people are going more so for the smell and flavor, or are they going more for the effect?
Again, it's an education piece. So I think more and more people are going to be looking at the terpene profile to determine what strain they want. It's what I certainly do. And it's what everybody that I know who knows a chunk about cannabis does, rather than the cannabinoid content. You got to remember too, a lot of these are recreational strains that have just been bred. I mean, they've been bred for THC, but then the terpenes have been kind of like inadvertently bred for, because that is the way that people interact with cannabis when they have it. They smell it, right? And they go, oh man, this smells really good. And so like we've kind of selected for that as well. And then also the terpenes having the on-charge effect will make, you know, a strain with the same level of THC appear to be stronger or more creative or better for pain or whatever. So that even though people weren't aware of them, they still were selecting for those terpenes. But now there's a lot more awareness of the modulating powers of the terpenes in the strains, and so people are kind of choosing on that basis. And I think it's a really good way to go for now, anyway, until more information comes up.
Beautiful. All right. Well, that's been quite an interesting chat, I have to say. It's something we get asked about all the time. It's something that's kind of, I still feel at this moment a bit of a dark art, the terpene blend. So you're definitely leading the way on that. We've got a lot of, you know, different doctors and pharmacists and educated professionals, let's say, talking about terpenes and you know, trying to figure out exactly where that might sit or how it might help their patients. So it's very interesting to hear it, dare I say it, from the horse's mouth. So thank you so much for sharing that wisdom and coming on the show and really imparting a bit of knowledge for some of the guests or some of the people that listen in.
I feel like, there's going to be people wanting to get in on some of those little park adventures and excursions that you do, where you, just take us for a bit of a guided terp tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I'm happy to take people walking, but they can do it themselves. Like take your phone, have Wikipedia, go smell a plant that you like, look it up, look up a paper, look up the terpene composition. It'll give you a full breakdown of what's in it. If you don't know what they are, it's kind of hard to pick them out. So maybe buy a few isolates from some company somewhere, and then you can kind of smell them and pick it out.
Yeah, there's one called My Terpenes actually. But anyway, yeah.
Can I just add one thing to this before we wrap though?
Sure.
I think okay, how do I say this?
Is this about Andrew's gopher?
he's doing well.
Ultimately, yes. Sometimes we're always trying to pursue knowledge, right? But sometimes we're too focused on the answer to a question and not what's the correct question to ask. And the way we ask the question will define the information that we get and the scale of that information. And so we're coming out of a time of specialization and reductionism, right? And from the scientific method that started when it started, from the Industrial Revolution onwards. And that period has given us just huge advancements in our technology and our understanding of very granular parts of the world. And we should be really grateful for that. And we need that to play a strong role in the future. However, the reductionist magic bullet hypothesis of single actives and single effects in this very mechanical Newtonian sense has massive blind spots. And cannabis, being the amazing teacher it is showing us that there's that putting certain elements together, there is a cumulative force and an emergent phenomena that comes out of it that is greater than all the parts. I just did it on my podcast an episode with Jimmy Willumban, and we talked about this. We talked about think of the concept of a whirlpool or a vortex. You have water and you put motion into that, and then you get this thing, this beautiful whirlpool that is an emergent phenomena of those two things. It is worth more than those two inputs. In the same way, if you give a beta, he will tell you that there's no difference between those two, and there aren't chemically, but there's emergent phenomena that comes out. And so when you go into anything deep enough, you end up in this kind of meta philosophical place. And so that's where terpenes is taking me, in the sense that we've had this great time of diving deep into reductionism and into really pulling apart the specific functions and actions. But that's created a whole host of emergent problems in the world today, and we're more interconnected than we ever have been before. And so I believe that transitioning from this reductionist paradigm to one that's more holistic, more integrative, and more respective of synergy, and probably a bit more humble as well, will give us our best chance to meet the emergent problems that we're facing today.
I couldn't agree more with all of that. And it's kind of, the proof is in what we've actually been doing to date. So when you give two people the same single molecule in that reductionist model, they're not going to necessarily experience the same effects from that. So and I like the thing you said at the end there about just being a bit more humble with the way that there doesn't need to be, I've got the cure, mic drop, bang, now I can make bank as a big pharmaceutical company. We really need to be working more collaboratively and more thoughtfully, and understanding that how someone is, and when you see them in everyday life, is not just the result of it's so complex. It's how much they slept the night before, it's what they're eating, there is so much going on, and we really need to be understanding that all of those factors are inputs that really do determine our overall health.
Absolutely.
No, completely agree with that. And the sooner we move away from this kind of single reductionist model, the better, because everyone is different. Every plant is different. We have to accept these things. But any final thoughts at all, Sam?
The thing is, I have a lot of respect for that model, and we shouldn't throw it away. We just need to kind of hold our views lightly enough that we can appreciate other perspectives of the same truth, you know. And so it's that integrative thing that will give us the best outcomes, I think.
Absolutely.
Especially if you want to get the best quality care for Andrew's.
It's just dropped out there, Mitch, but I think you were making reference to my Gopher again. And for anyone listening, by the way, I don't really actually have a Gopher, but I'm thinking about it after this episode.
I'll also take this opportunity to plug my podcast. So
please.
So it's called Infinity Node, where we explore the hidden and emergent connections between the inner and outer worlds, looking at science, philosophy, all the stuff I'm interested in. It's not released yet. We've just recorded the 3rd episode with Cameron Rosen. So I don't know when you guys are going to publish this, but it should be out pretty soon. Infinity Node with Sam Barlow. Go check it out if you like this.
Unreal.
100, and we've had Cam Rosen on here, and we're having him on again because he's such a legend. So
he is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool.
Beautiful. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Till next time. Take care.
Yep. Bye.
Cheers.